Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Modern Sales Pros Masterclass on ridiculously creative ideas for prospecting. Woo! Sponsored by the team at Vidyard. Really, really excited to have the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler Lessard with us. Tyler, this is actually your first time in a while on anything with MSP, so thanks for joining us. We have a little bit of a tradition before we jump into the content. We always want to learn a little bit more about our panelists and our folks.
Yeah.
Where are you, first and foremost, where are you calling in from? And then secondly, where are you really excited to travel to once it's safe and all of that to kind of get out?
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me back. I love the community. I've been a part of MSP for a number of years now, so kudos to the group. I'm coming at you from just outside of Toronto, up here north of the border in Canada. Vidyard is headquartered in Kitchener, Ontario, about an hour west of Toronto. I'm born and raised in the area here. Love living in the space that we do. And, in terms of where I'm going to go, I'm not sure. Here in Canada, I don't know if we're ever going to get to travel anywhere else anytime soon. I do have, though, plans this summer to go camping, which is the one thing we can do where we actually travel somewhere where we distance away even more from people, which is kind of cool. So I'm actually just really looking forward to going camping this summer and getting out with my family, getting out on the lake and having some fun.
That's great. And you have to enjoy that in a couple months before you get 18 feet of snow or 12 meters or whatever it is, right?
It is the best place in the world to live for 3 months of the year, my friend.
I love it. I love it. Excellent. Well, folks, do let us know where you're calling in from. The chat panel's open here. We got a lot to cover today, so we're going to jump right into it. As I mentioned at the outset, today's session is hosted by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you who don't know, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest community for revenue leaders. Those are folks that are in sales management, sales and revenue operations, and the related supporting disciplines. Our community has 22,000 and growing members, and our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they may otherwise struggle to solve on their own, and also see around corners that they may not know are coming up ahead. We do that through bringing on great speakers like Tyler here today and talking about amazing topics like ridiculously creative ideas for prospecting. We also bring together the best and the brightest in our community on our online forum. And hopefully in the future, we're really looking forward to getting back to in-person events so we can actually, Tyler, you and I can do this conversation live, grab a beer afterwards or a cup of coffee, depending on what time of day it is. For those of you who aren't members, you will be invited to join afterwards, and we'd certainly encourage you to do so. Everything we do is free for our members. But as I mentioned at the outset, this session wouldn't be possible without sponsorship at Vidyard. I'm going to hand it off to Tyler to say just a few words about Vidyard. Tyler?
Well, thanks so much. We are very much a proud sponsor as well as participant in the community. Vidyard, for those of you who don't know, we provide technologies that relate to the topic here today, helping marketing and sales teams use video in creative new ways for everything from prospecting to throughout the deal cycle to helping to support their customers. So our flagship tools make it easy to record and send custom video messages as a salesperson, whether it be external to prospects and customers or internal as part of your team. So we'll hear a lot more about ideas for how to use video throughout the session here, but really excited about the trends that we're seeing in the market and how video is helping a lot of sellers in this remote first world still maintain that human connection with their prospects.
And we're going to dive into some ridiculously creative examples. Yeah. No pressure, Tyler. I hope you're ready for it.
I'm stoked. I'm stoked.
And one of the great parts about working with Vidyard is they're actually not only a sponsor of today's session, but they're a sponsor of next month's Modern Sales Pros Revenue Excellence Summit. So once a quarter, we pull together some of the most provocative, thought-provoking, challenging content for organizations. And as we've seen the evolution in the pandemic, many organizations were forced to reconcile with maybe a broken sales motion or very maybe inefficient or ineffective ways to go to market. Our summit in July is all focused on the funnel is dead, long live the flywheel, or as Forrester calls it, the bow tie, but really challenging all of our attendees to think more broadly about how they go to market. It's not just sales does some stuff, hands it off to customer success and moves on. Customer success does some stuff and hopes that the customer is happy. but really thinking about creating advocates from the very first marketing touch all the way through until you upsell. The registration link is in the chat panel. Encourage you to join as well, and you'll get to see Tyler talk again about actually a different topic there. But enough about modern sales pros. Let's learn a little bit more about Tyler. Tyler, it's been a while since you've been on, so I'd love it if you could just introduce yourself to our attendees here today, and then we'll start to jump in.
Yeah, so really quickly, I'm my formal role here is VP Marketing at Vidyard. Though over the last number of years, I've spent most of my time personally engaged within the community, particularly the sales community, and understanding how people are using video to achieve their results and produce better outcomes. And as part of that, I've expanded my title to be Chief Video Strategist, because I find most of my time I'm now helping companies strategize on how to use video in their own processes, right through from first touch to last upsell. And that's what I love doing and super passionate about. And the things I'm going to share here today are all sourced from the community. These aren't examples from myself or my own employees. This is all about stuff we're seeing out there in the community of other sellers and how they're using video to transform the way they do things. So love the opportunity that we have out there today, and excited to get into it.
Awesome. And then just 2 housekeeping notes for our folks that are here in attendance. The chat panel's open. Feel free to chime in on there if you agree with something Tyler's saying or you disagree. If you got a great question that you want to ask, please do put that in the Q&A panel. That allows folks to upvote or respond to others' questions. That also helps us keep the content flowing in a way that's a little bit more organic. And then finally, before somebody puts it in the chat panel or in the Q&A panel, the recording will be made available typically about 24 hours after this. You'll see this up on the MSP, the Modern Sales Pros YouTube channel, post-event page as well, with all the key takeaways. So with that, Tyler, you ready to talk about some ridiculously creative prospecting ideas?
I think I am. But first, I got to kick it off with a question for the audience here, which I'll also put into the chat. And I need all of you, to drop a yes or a no into the chat, please. Okay, my question is a very simple one. Are you or your team using custom video messages as part of your sales process today? You can say yes, you can say no, you can maybe say I don't know, because you may not be aware of what others on your team are doing. But when I talk about this, it's not Zoom calls. I'm talking about recording and sending a video that a prospect or a customer can watch on their own time, whether it be part of your prospecting or something you're using throughout the rest of your sales cycle.
All right.
Right.
And Tyler, I'm curious to know what you've seen once we get a few more answers in here, what you see from folks. If it's like it's a lot of folks are on board this train, or there's some folks that are like, we're not quite totally there yet.
Yeah. Well, for the most part, in the general community, it's still a very new concept for most. Where we see very few sellers who are taking advantage of video in meaningful ways above and beyond, again, live Zoom calls. So in the overall market, it's still very new. In some communities like MSP, where we tend to have folks who are a little bit more tech savvy and a little bit more on the bleeding edge, we see a lot of folks who have started to use video in different ways through their processes. But so often it's less of a like, why should I be doing it? It's more of a like, how can I actually use it to really benefit my results? And how can I get a little bit more creative with it to have a real meaningful impact, which is, of course, what I want to talk about here today.
I dig it. And for folks that just joined, I know we had a big chunk of folks just show up just in the chat panel here, answer Tyler's questions. Go ahead and let us know, are you or your team using custom video today? That's not just using Zoom for meetings, but also using it as part of your prospecting activities here. And that's something too. I think this is a technology that I know we at MSP are just starting to figure out how to really take advantage of. It's very, very powerful. We've seen some very interesting results with it so far.
Yeah. Well, the big thing for all of you out there, whether you've started to use it or not, or if this is a foreign concept to you, just to be clear on what we're talking about here, over the last few years, it's become simple, frankly, to be able to record and send a video as part of an email message or even a message over LinkedIn or other channels when reaching out to a prospect or a customer. And with the tools becoming available that make it easy, and a lot of those tools are free as well, we've started to see this rise in the use of this idea. And the way to think about it from a prospecting perspective, which is kind of the topic du jour here today, is I'll help you sort of visually understand what we're talking about. And it's when we're prospecting and we're sending an email to an individual, we all know like response rates are abysmally low to emails. I think across the board, we all struggle with lower than we'd like to response rates in our prospecting. But on this side of me over here, you can see, like, I mean, a traditional email, as we all know, lands in somebody's inbox, easily ignorable, right? Most people just they glance, they go, but with a tool like a Vidyard or others, the idea here is sending an email that includes a video like this. I'd have a nice play button in front of me that shows up in their inbox with the thumbnail image in the email, so they can visually see as soon as they open it, oh, there's a video here waiting for me. They're going to see your face if you've had your camera on. There's other things you can do to make sure that that thumbnail image is personalized to them to make it irresistible for them to click in and watch. When they do click on it, they're going to be taken to a dedicated page, and that video will immediately start playing back for them. And the whole idea here is to find a new way, first of all, just to stand out with something that's a bit of a pattern disrupt, something that's new for people. And frankly, that shows that you're willing to put the effort in to personalize a message to them and to deliver it in a way that's a lot more meaningful and impactful. And so in a lot of cases, we're seeing sales teams report higher engagement rates and higher response rates just from the simple fact of adding in a video like this into their email outreach. But then those who figured out how to do things in really smart ways and really hyper-personalize those videos are seeing even higher response rates because, again, they're really drawing people in to click play and engage. So one example of that, Richard, is instead of just sending an email with a video with myself on camera, if I were prospecting, I've got one of my favorite salespeople out there, Kayla Seitron-Thaler. If I were prospecting her, then I might send her a video with a screen recording with her LinkedIn profile up on the screen and my face in the corner, right? That looks something like this. So this email would land in Kayla's inbox. I'd have like a video for you, Kayla, in the subject line. First of all, she's going to go, video for me? That's weird. I don't normally get that. What's this about? I got to check it out. She opens it up, and now she sees a thumbnail image of her own LinkedIn profile with myself in the corner waving like a goof. And she's going to start to think it's going to create this curiosity gap for her, right? It's going to be like, wait a minute, that's me. Who's this person? This is interesting.
I'm clicking in. I'm curious about what you're up to.
Right? I mean, it's hard not to. But what also, not only does it like create that curiosity of like, they're on my LinkedIn profile, this is what's going on. It also, like, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And immediately, like in a fraction of a second, they know that you genuinely made this just for them, right? Because it's their LinkedIn profile, right? This isn't an automated message. And so their expectation of value goes way up, which again is why we continue to hear higher engagement and response rates when doing things like this. So that's one simple example, and I've got a bunch of others that we'll share with you here as we go to talk about how you can use these videos to your advantage, particularly when you're prospecting. If you're a little bit thoughtful and creative with your team on how to make sure it stands out and it's not just another, Me Too kind of message out there.
I love it. I love where you're going with this, Tyler, but I got to play you back. We've got a variety of folks in MSP and a variety of levels of maturity of video adoption. How do you, great, I get it, open rates, good stuff coming from that, but like, how do we actually get teams over the hump to like pop the video on and record? Because it's if you haven't recorded a video of yourself, it's all of the things. It's an interesting opportunity, and it's very challenging for some folks to get rocking and rolling with that. How do you encourage organizations to kind of overcome video fear? Maybe, I don't know what the right term for it would be.
The easy answer is, well, how did you do it for cold calling? Right? Like reps always had to figure out cold calling at some point. And the first time they did it, it felt terrible. They hated it. It sucked. Their first cold call was terrible. It was an abysmal failure. They did 5 more and it still kind of sucked. Then they did 50 and they did 100, and it started to just become a way that they do business, right? And it was a critical way that they do business because it was a key part of this portfolio or this diversification of how we reach out. And so I think it's like anything that's new like that. Absolutely. It's going to feel odd for some people when they start recording these videos because it is different from being on a live call, right? It's more like, a quick elevator pitch or a short presentation. And so it does feel awkward doing it initially. People will stumble over their words. They won't quite figure out how to message it naturally. But with many of these things, there's a few. Number one is definitely practice, makes as close to perfect as possible. Practice, practice, practice. Much like cold calling, every video you make, you get more comfortable and you get more confident, right? Those are the most important things, your comfort level and your confidence level in doing it. What you'll also find is when, just like making cold calls, as you try to deliver your message over and over again, it gets easier and easier every time. And once you've done 30, 40 videos, again, these are like 1-minute videos. We're not talking about, an hour-long presentation here. So these are short videos where as you practice it, the comfort level comes, and ultimately you get better and better each time. One of the things I see people doing a lot to make that happen is starting using it internally in their teams as well as externally. So your first 50 videos, maybe 20 of them were internal videos where you were providing feedback to somebody, you were answering a question, you were sending around an update. And instead of just sending a typical email, you'll record a video of yourself and send it over. So doing it internally as well as externally breaks the ice a little bit. It starts to give people the opportunity just to practice and learn the motion, and start to get a better feel for it and increase that comfort and confidence level.
I like that analogy to cold calling, because your first cold calls were definitely bad, and I'm glad that most of those aren't recorded for at least I know in my era conversation. But I think this is interesting. We got a couple good live questions coming in here. One's from Mads, and Mads is wondering what percentage of videos are sent or watched. Like, what are you seeing on that? Because it is, like you said, it's a little bit more effort, but are they being watched, or is it just that they're engaging with the email more with a higher frequency?
Yeah, it's hard to say there. It's hard to get stats directly on like how many people watch the video, versus other things. But what we have found, a couple of things. So there was a statistical study done by SalesLoft recently where they analyzed, it was like over 170 million emails sent through sequences out from their base. And they analyzed those sequences that included videos versus those that did not. And they found on average, there was a 26% higher response rate to the sequences that had videos versus the sequences that didn't. Now, I wasn't able to get down to the level of like, okay, like how many of those videos got watched, or did they respond directly to the video? But what was interesting is they were looking at the overall sequence. And one would assume that, first of all, the emails with the videos garnered a higher response rate. But I think more importantly is the overall sequence got a higher response. And I think there's a lot of things that go into that, right? When you're including a video as part of the overall messaging structure, it's part of all the other things you're doing. It's part of the call, it's part of the social connect, it's part of the text-based only emails. But it becomes a really important part because it's the one where they can actually see you, they can hear you, they can get to know you, and they will correlate you as a person, back to your email address or your phone number, right? So now even just having that video in the sequence humanizes you to that prospect. And if you get really good at it, there are ways to make sure that those emails with the videos do get high open and response rates, right? So there's a few tricks to the trade, right? Some people will get low view rates on their videos, and it might be because their subject lines just aren't working. And they're not even opening the email in the first place, right? In other cases, it might be the video and the thumbnail image just don't seem enticing. They're not personalized, right? So the big tips I can give you, and I can show you a couple of examples to help make sure you maximize the engagement and response rate. Number one is your subject line, which is your first line of defense for your prospect, is you can do things like changing it up to say, video for you, Richard, or Richard made you this video.
For me.
Seeing is believing, right? So something like that, where you're teasing now in the subject line, something that's different, something that's more personal. And even by seeing made you this video, it instills a sense to that person that you put some serious effort into reaching out, and their expectation of value goes up. So be mindful of being smart about your subject line. The second thing then is the copy to introduce your video. You want to keep it short because the video is the hero, but the goal of the copy isn't to book the meeting, right? Let me say that again. The goal of the copy is not to book the meeting. The goal of the copy is to get them to hit play. Because once you get them to hit play, you've got them, right? Now your personality is going to shine, right? They're going to meet you. Even if they don't respond to that message, getting them to watch you for 30 to 60 seconds is a huge, huge thing. So structure your copy to create curiosity and to hit that play button. And then, of course, the last thing is that thumbnail image. And if they see that, does it look enticing to click on? Is it clear that you made this video just for them? It don't always have to, right? A lot of reps will use videos they record generically and send them out, but you're always going to get a higher engagement rate on videos you make just for that individual. And again, there's things you can do visually as a cue to make sure that they know you really did make this just for them.
One important part that Tyler mentioned there that I want to highlight is the subject line. No amount of video is going to save you from bad subject lines. So you can build the greatest video in the world, but that's an important piece. Oftentimes in modern sales pros, the discussion goes like, hold on, I've got this tool and it's not giving me the results that Tyler said. And it's like, well, it's actually your subject lines aren't actually hitting the mark. It doesn't matter what you got in the email, no one's opening it.
Yeah. Well, it's a really big thing. What's really cool that people miss as well, when a video is the call to action in the email, it gives you now liberty to try new things in your subject line, right? So it's not only, you could still be using your typical subject lines that you've found to maximize your open rates, but you've now suddenly got this whole other opportunity to go, now, wait a minute. If I'm including a video here, actually, I can try all new things with my subject line and start to actually do, A/B testing within that for things like video for you, made you this video. I think a lot of people miss that, and they just still go back to their traditional subject lines without thinking like, hey, what can I do to actually increase my open rates on the email because a video is the destination? Yeah.
It's interesting. Good conversation so far. Keep the questions coming in the Q&A panel. We've got a few in there right now. Question coming in from Kathleen. I'll paraphrase here. Are there certain industries or verticals where you've seen a lot of success, or industries where maybe this doesn't make sense? And Kathleen mentions, maybe in healthcare, this isn't going to play as well as maybe tech. What are you seeing kind of across the board there, Tyler?
Yeah, first and foremost, we've certainly seen evidence that this can work in frankly any industry. We're selling to real people. We're real people ourselves, and this is about a human-to-human outreach, no matter what market it is that you're in. That said, there's absolutely nuances based on the persona you're selling to, based on the industry. For example, if you're selling to marketing or sales personas in high tech, we see great success there. Because those are individuals who, again, tend to be a little bit more tech forward. They're used to seeing things like images and links in their emails. They tend to have more of outgoing personalities. All those things sort of mix and match to say they're great candidates for it. People will often ask, can you use it for executives? And will executives really watch a video? And I would say in that case, they certainly will. But you have to put yourself in the mindset of that audience and say, well, the biggest challenge with a C-level executive is time, and they're not willing to give people time. It's very precious for them. And so you need to make sure you're making a video to save them time, not just to pitch your message, right? And be clear about that and say, I made you this video because I wanted to allow you within 30 seconds to let me know where to go with this, right? And my video is just, hey, it's Tyler from Vidyard here. I've seen this sort of thing, and I'm trying to connect with your person in your team who'd be responsible for it. I would love some direction on who that might be, right? A short video like that's actually designed to save them time. And from an industry perspective, I think, again, generally it can work across the board. People are hesitant with like older legacy industries, but again, people are people, and no matter what, that sort of relationship piece matters. The areas where we do see people struggle are things like selling into cybersecurity, IT professionals, people who are less likely to click on links and images, or may even have firewalls that are limiting or blocking links and images. In that case, I always encourage people to use text-based emails at the start of their sequence and use a video a little bit later on, but also try to connect with them on LinkedIn and then send them a video directly over LinkedIn as a way to communicate with them directly.
Yeah, I was thinking about, selling to like information security officers who are like, how did you get my email? You're blocked at the domain, like go away.
Yeah, it's a tough gig for emailing them regardless.
It's like cold calling engineers. Like if you're doing that, it's not gonna end well for many people. A question that comes in here, and I think this probably comes up a lot for you, Tyler. There is additional effort required for this. There is a little bit more time. How have you seen organizations successfully figure out who to use video, like which personas, and then at which time in the sequence to use it?
Yeah. So in terms of the persona, it's hard to answer that generally, of course, and you need to be mindful of that for sure within your own prospecting and thinking about both kind of the tier or priority of a lead, the persona that you're reaching out to. And yeah, certainly being mindful of like, does it feel like the right persona and the right priority of a lead where spending the time to make them a video is worthwhile? That said, some people who, once they do this, it's faster for them to record a video than it is to personalize an email. In some cases, they get very good at it and it just becomes really quick. But I think that is something to be mindful of. And I can't tell you a right or wrong answer, but you're thinking about the right questions, right? You need to be smart about that. In terms of the, kind of like thinking about the tiers of your leads, one of the things I might recommend is there are ways to use videos at bigger scale, right? Like you can record a video and have it available in your library where it's not personalized every time, right? It could just be a video where you hit record and it's, hey there, it's Tyler from Vidyard here. And I'm reaching out because da-da-da-da-da. And I just want to introduce myself a bit more personally and to see if that's a problem you might have, right? So I can record a general video and have it ready that I can send to a person anytime I want without having to re-record, right? So I can have general ones available. But then if it's, again, a more important lead, somebody who I think is worth the effort, then yeah, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to make them a custom video. I'm going to make sure the thumbnail image is personalized to them. And when I send it, I'm not just going to be send it and, oh, they didn't watch, I'm done. If they don't watch it, my next email is going to be a bump on the video, right? It's going to be any feedback on the video I sent you. My next voicemail is going to be, hey there, just reaching out because I made you a video, I sent it to your inbox. Not sure if you had a chance to watch, but I would love your feedback, right? And so my subsequent touches are reinforcing that video that I took the time to make for you. And boy, you better watch it because it's something special, right? And so I think that's the way to think about it. There are sort of continuums of personalization you can do with email or with videos. The one other thing I'll mention is you can also do a company-based video as opposed to an individual. So if you're prospecting into modern sales pros, I might make one video for modern sales pros. And I might have your website up on my screen, or I might have my whiteboard with a message for you. And then I'll make that video and say, hey there, team of modern sales pros, Tyler here, da, 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 da. And then I'll send that to Richard, and I'll send it to Taylor, and I'll send it to 5 other people at Modern Sales Pros. And I'll sit back and wait to get alerted. Okay, who's watching, who's not. And then I'll follow up with the right people who are actually engaging. So lots of different ideas there to think about how to scale it and when to prioritize using it.
Yeah, and I think that's, and Tyler, you said this at the beginning of that. It's the right question to ask because you can't do this all the time for everybody, all the leads and all of that. Yeah. A couple other thoughts on this too, Tyler. Kind of coming back to some of the more creative prospecting ideas that you've seen. Question coming in from Paula. Have you seen videos used in maybe group messages or sent out via like automation? And you started to touch on that a little bit before, but what have you seen in that like kind of scale scenario?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's no reason you can't include like a video in your one-to-many outreach as well with, understanding that, again, you're not attaching the video file, you're putting an image, hopefully with a thumbnail image and a nice play button on it, which is then linked to somewhere to watch that video. And so you can definitely do it for one-to-many, but again, understanding that video is going to be generic, right? It's not something that you can customize necessarily for each person. And so in many cases, you might see a higher engagement rate than a traditional email. You might not. It depends on your industry, but you may want to try it. But again, I think the real hero becomes, and the real impact is when you send these personalized ones. And again, for those key accounts, let me show you all a couple, because I know we teased you in with the promise of like examples of the most creative ones we've seen. Let me show you a couple here of my favorites, to give you like a visual example of what we're talking about here. So the first one I'll show you is a really simple one that everybody can do. And it's that example I alluded to of making a video with somebody's LinkedIn profile up on the screen behind you. Again, the idea here is to tease them in with something that they can relate to and they'll see that they'll recognize, but then using it as a pivot into the conversation you want to have. So I'm just going to quickly, I won't show it all. You'll get the gist of it after a few seconds. But here's an example from Kayla, who I was actually prospecting in my earlier example, of how she does this. And this is like her go-to, and like her conversion rates on these are through the roof. So here's a quick example of that.
Hey Prakash, wanted to send you a quick video because I was reading the article in Forbes where you were answering questions about innovation and growth at Autodesk. And you touched upon the fact of the importance of collaboration and productivity and really allowing employees to do their best work and reducing friction and driving this transformation. And something it also mentioned was that in general,
So I'll pause it there. She goes on a little bit. It's about a minute-long video that she now starts to open up some of the things that represent potential problems that she can help solve, right? Now, it's funny, actually, as you look at that title, that was the CIO at Autodesk. Did she book the meeting? Yes, she did. We just got finished talking about how security professionals aren't going to watch your videos. Well, that debunked that myth, right? Like she got engagement on that video and piqued interest and created a conversation out of it, right? It wasn't a demo call. It was, hey, let's talk. I want to see if, we can go further about this and see if there's interest. But again, her sending that with his actual LinkedIn profile on the screen created that immediate connection. And that's that power of like really one-to-one. Can I show you another example, Richard? One of my favorites.
Yeah, let's do one more and then we'll take some more questions. I think these are helpful for me at least too.
This is one of my all-time favorites. This was one of our winners of our 2020 Video Selling Awards. We do these annually. For all of you listening, our next ones will be coming up this year. So get ready, get good. One of last year's winners, his name was Matt Hall at a company called Woodway UK. And he sells packaging solutions for companies who ship physical products. And he had been doing the usual emails and phone calls. And one of his key target accounts is the Body Shop. Richard, I'm sure you're familiar with the Body Shop, great bath bombs, shampoos.
You think that this just shines up on its own? No.
So what he did was he put in the extra effort. Right now, this is one of a lot of extra effort. So admittedly, this isn't something you're going to do necessarily every day. But this is one where he actually showed them without a shadow of a doubt how it is that he can help through a hyper-personalized video that there's no way you could have convinced them through a traditional email. So let's take a look at this one.
Hi there, Andy. Matt here from Woodway UK. Hope you're well. Andy, getting in touch today because I recently received a package from yourselves at the Body Shop, and upon unboxing it, realised that actually we at Woodway could do something a little bit different for you, make the packaging more sustainable, make it more effective for your packers when they're packing it, and also make it a better unboxing experience for your customers. So what I've done, me and my colleague have put together this short video of us unboxing the box. So here you have the tissue paper on the top, products in the middle, which were safely intact, which is always a good sign, and then also a little bit of tissue paper on the bottom. And what I did, Andy, is once I got all the tissue paper out, raveled it all just to see how much had actually been used. And as you can see from here, it's about 7 meters, which is quite a bit. So what I want to do is whet your appetite with the red paper on the right hand side. Now that's what I use to safely and securely pack your products back into the box. And if you want to understand how I did that, then click the button at the end of the video that says book a meeting. You can then book a packaging discussion with myself at a convenient time for you, and we can discuss how.
Do you think they booked the packaging discussion?
1,000%. And I just want to set the context for folks that maybe missed what we just went through right there. That was a seller who was selling packaging products and trying to sell into the Body Shop. He then recorded that video of himself unboxing the package and then saying, hey, this is what it could look like if you used our packaging solution. And that's he booked that meeting. Did he close the deal?
I didn't even ask him. I'm like, you booked the meeting. That was your initial job. Actually, at the time when he submitted, he said he was in an opportunity cycle with them. So I haven't followed up. I'm gonna have to ask him. But yeah, like such a great example of like so many things happened in 72 seconds there. Number one, he comes across as a very competent, confident seller. Comes across very personal and trustworthy, right? Like in ways that a regular email could never ever show. And then of course, he like showed rather than just told and proved to me, oh, wow, he really can help me. But all along, he also gave you this sense of how invested he was to working with you because he took the time to order the package and do these things. Now, again, you're not going to do this at scale in your own sales team. And maybe you don't have an analogy of how you could show somebody how you could help them. But I hope that sparks like some creative thinking of like, yeah, wow, you know what? This is more than just delivering my typical message in a video. It's like when you start to think about, well, now that I can pair up visuals and storytelling, my own voice and intonation and body language with my messaging, it opens up a whole new world of prospecting, right? And that's where like bringing up their website, bringing up their LinkedIn profile, showing them how you can help. I've got another example from a guy named Sam Keene who was prospecting into a company who sells weights for gyms. And of course, in his video, he's lifting weights through the whole thing as he's doing his pitch to show them, again, that he can relate to them. And the cool thing about that example, it was another submission last year, was he didn't book the meeting from that video. until 3 months later, when they followed up with him, he had stopped communicating with them. And 3 months later, they messaged him saying, hey, we're actually looking for something in this, and we remembered your video. We wanted to reach out and see what you can do for us, right? So again, interesting ideas to also then be memorable through the sales process.
But I think there's a lot here to unpack, but this actually dovetails into Bobby's question that we have in the Q&A panel about maybe industries that are a little bit slower to adopt, or maybe a little bit technology averse. He uses the service industry, right? Tree service, landscaping, et cetera. Any tips or tricks for cracking that nut?
I think for those, there's a lot of industries where I find, especially, again, traditional industries for those of us who live in the high tech world, where a lot of those industries are still all about relationships, right? And about the people, like especially services agencies or services companies, right? Like your value prop as a company that does, maybe you do tree, tree removal, or you're a landscaping company. Your value is in your skill sets, in your people, right? And in the stories of your happy customers. And again, I would challenge you to say, what better way than a video to let those things shine through for somebody you're prospecting, right? Like if they get a chance to actually hear you and meet you, like I know the last person that I contracted to do a lawn care service for me, it was about the person. Like when I actually talked to them, I was like, holy shit, you know what you're talking about. Like you're totally on this, and you're highly reputable. I can tell that I'm enjoy working with you. It ended up being all about, trusting that person. And yes, of course, they shared a couple stories of people in my neighborhood who also use them. And so again, I challenge you to think, again, it may be that the people, they're not tech savvy, so they don't want to make the videos, but we're all doing this in our personal lives now. Like I challenge you to find somebody who hasn't recorded a video on their phone in the last year, right? Or who hasn't watched a video on TikTok or something like that, that is just this kind of personal, familial kind of thing. And I don't think it has to be anything more complicated than that. It's like, just sit down and talk about it and go, if you were to record a quick video and send it to somebody to try to, talk about this or get your business, what might you say, right? And then just riff on a little bit and go, okay, let's try it out here. Hit record, go, right? And then just, start to make it a part of how you try things out. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but you're not going to know until you actually start trying.
And I think that's an important point that Tyler hit on there, right? Like we're doing this in our personal lives. We're consuming more hours of video content than we ever have as human beings. Just like we're starting to see the rise of, product-led growth where I can self-serve and buy your product, the buying experience that a lot of buyers expect is more what they're getting in the consumer world. This is no different. This is just another component of that consumerization, or a tool that allows you to better consumerize that experience. So a couple more questions coming in, more around best practices though. Tyler, any tips or tricks around kind of length and duration of videos? What works best?
Yeah, glad to hear it. Get that question every single time we talk about video. It's the right question. When you're using it for prospecting specifically, right? As we all know, you haven't yet built the relationship, you're interrupting them for all intents and purposes. And so what we recommend is prospecting videos should be between 30 to 90 seconds in length. Ideally 30 to 60 is really the sweet spot for early stage prospecting. We see a lot of people that will do 1 or 2 videos throughout their sequence. And so often one early on. That same report from SalesLoft showed that videos had the highest impact when they were used early in the sequence, and particularly within the first 5 to 10 days. So I know a lot of sellers who will do a short 30 to 60 second video as one of their first 1 or 2 emails. And then later on, they may do another video if they haven't gotten a response yet, which again, may be short, or it may even be just a slight bit longer, up to 90 seconds, where they may be showing them something a little bit more and kind of leaving them with something to make sure it's memorable, even if they don't follow up, that they're going to get a bit of a taste for what it is that they're offering. So that's my guidance there. Once somebody has responded and you're now in a dialogue, obviously you now have liberty to create a little bit longer content if they're asking for it, or if there's something that they really want to see.
I think that's another goes back to kind of who you're selling to, what stage you're at, and how comfortable you are with it. One other, and this is actually a question that came in from registration. How do you think about, like, how much time should it actually take for an organization to kind of get mature with this? Like you said, now it's really easy. You pop open the video. Is this a 2-week thing? Is this a 2-month thing? Like, what have you seen as folks buy Vidyard? How long does it take before they, get it?
Yeah, it's all over the map, frankly, and it depends so much on the culture of the team, the types of sellers that you have, but also the support that they get, of course, in rolling it out, in utilizing it, and being taught and trained on best practices and being given examples. There is certainly a percentage of sellers who will get the tool, they'll look at some examples, and they'll be like, I got this. I'm going gangbusters, and they crush it, right? But the reality is that's a small percentage of most sellers. And so, for a lot of the others, it can certainly take time. It can take weeks, it can take months for it to really become an integrated part of their sales process. And what I would recommend, in addition to just, of course, the practice makes perfect statement, is that when you do roll out with your teams, like any other sales tool, don't underestimate the importance of both training your team, but making it a sort of collaborative project to learn the best practices for yourselves, right? Most successful deployments start with a small pilot group of users, those who are the hand raisers and going, yeah, I can figure this out. I love this. I got this. You work with them to figure out a few examples of like we talked about here. Okay, so we're going to try a webcam video with, you're going to all get whiteboards and you're going to write a message on it. And we're going to try a video with their LinkedIn profile up. And, we're going to try another video where we show them a little bit about what we can do. So let's try those out and see what works. And so they'll, kind of go with it. They'll figure out some examples, and then you'll scale it to a broader part of your team, and you'll use those initial champions to do that, right? And they'll help train and support the other people within the team as peers, show them what's worked for them, coach them on their messaging, and take it from there. I think it's a really important thing, and being mindful that, Vidyard is a really simple tool to do this, but it's all in what kind of videos you make with it, right? How you adapt your messaging. So make it a team sport, right? Have some fun with it as well. You can run internal competitions to get people to brainstorm ideas, or, to recognize the best video or things like that. Those things work really well too.
I love it. And I think this is a question that comes up a lot too, Tyler, and it came up in registration. I'm sure some folks on are thinking about it. Is like completely cold prospecting. Yep. Is this the first message in a sequence includes a video? Is it somewhere in there once they know a little bit about our organization? What would you recommend? And I know that's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, no, we found it work in both situations. Again, I don't think there is a one size fits all. I absolutely see sellers that their first email, so they'll usually start with the triple touch, as we like to call it. So they will do a LinkedIn Connect, depending on their market, but a LinkedIn Connect, a phone call, and then an email. And that email will often include a video right off the bat, because they want to put their best foot forward for their first impression. And they want to maximize their chances of getting an early response so that they don't have to, send them more, right? If the earlier I can get a response, the more efficient it is for me. So often I do see that. In other cases, they'll start with a plain text-based email coupled with a LinkedIn Connect and a phone call. And then their second or their third email will include the video. So again, there's no one size fits all, but I really would encourage you to use it in that early part of your process. But again, for a lot of people, they're absolutely using it on their first touch and seeing success with it.
I love it. I think that's great. And I think one of the other questions, and this comes up, I'm sure, a lot for Vidyard, is security. And how are you seeing any impact on that as the world becomes more privacy conscious, as organizations coach their teams and train their teams not to click on links?
Yep.
What do you say?
Yeah. And it's a reality for anything like this, for any emails you're sending with images or links in them, that they will ultimately be held to a different standard amongst firewalls and filters. So again, my suggestion there, at large, we have not seen it to be a material issue. We talk to a lot of our users. Obviously, our own teams use this extensively. And generally speaking, we don't see much in terms of these getting blocked by firewalls or being flagged as spam or anything like that. Importantly, it's not like a YouTube link. which would get caught because a lot of companies specifically have things like YouTube blocked. That said, again, there's absolutely going to be larger enterprises or organizations in regulated markets that may have stricter filters on their firewalls that may strip out images, right? So sometimes your thumbnail image might not get through, and that's just a fact of life. And so always making sure you've got the hyperlink to it as well is important. And the last thing I would, again, this just goes back to the benefit of really personalizing your message as well as personalizing your video and the thumbnail is when they do get through, like you said, you're still now at the behest of the user to say, I'm not sure if I should click on this. But that's where if the video itself is personalized to them, they see their own name, their own website, their own LinkedIn profile. If you've introduced it in a way that's personalized, you've referenced their name, their company, we see people are very likely and willing to click on these. And again, going back to those earlier stats, they do prove that, that they absolutely can generate higher response rates. So, yep.
I think it's good context and good content on that. Folks, please do throw some questions in the Q&A panel. We got Tyler for a little bit more. Tyler, I actually wanted you to share the story we were chatting about earlier about the power of video. We've talked a lot about it from a prospecting standpoint, but the enterprise story that you told me, where the AE had shared a video with, I think, 5 people, and it ended up having a whole bunch of views. Can you just share that story? I hope you remember.
Yeah, it's an important point. We're here to talk about prospecting, but using videos like these is something that we're seeing, account executives and people using through the whole sales process. And when you start to do this, it's funny because, you actually start to think about, well, why wouldn't I, like at some points in my communication cycle, why wouldn't I record a video and send it over instead of just sending a traditional email? And what we've seen is those sellers who actually get strategic with it, they start to find that during their sales cycle, they will, intentionally and proactively start recording and sending videos over to their target account to continuously build relationships, to update them on things, to proactively address questions that they're expecting they might get, and to actually get more people there to meet them in the first place, to see them, to hear them. And secondly, to keep their deal cycles moving faster. Because in the traditional world, we so often wait for the next call or the next Zoom meeting to progress the deal, right? And more often than ever, we're not actually, so few people at these accounts are actually seeing and hearing us. I don't know about all of you out there, but a lot of things that I'm seeing out there, it's just the champion there who's actually even getting on the Zoom calls. Most of the other stakeholders, they're not even getting on Zoom calls with reps anymore. They're in the background, they're lingering, and you never actually get to get your face in front of them. And so, yeah, sales reps who are like, hey, I'm going to record a quick walkthrough with my screen share of how this certain thing works. And then they're going to send it over with the intention of it getting watched by 5 or 6 of the different stakeholders, right? People who didn't join the Zoom meeting. But now all of a sudden, those people get to see you, they get to hear you, actually walk through it. And you're actually building a relationship with them asynchronously. So there's all these little things that we can do to say, yeah, these short videos can get my face and voice in front of more people in these companies, even if they're not jumping on Zoom calls or attending live meetings.
And I think a follow-on question, because you started to talk about kind of the data and the impact that can have as your organization starts to use video in their prospecting. How do they actually look at the success of the video? Right? If you think of your traditional sequence, right? You've got open rate, click-through rate, all of that. What are the metrics that Vidyard looks at to say, hey, this is successful video, or this isn't a successful video?
Yeah, it's interesting because you can look at it through the lens of each video, is it being successful? Is it getting watched and is it getting engagement? And then you look at it at a more holistic level and say, has adding video into the way that we do things helped us achieve our overall goals of more pipeline, shorter deal cycles, higher close rates, those sorts of things. So you certainly do want to think about both. And so first and foremost, on the videos themselves, the reason you want to look at that and say, I want to make sure I know which ones are getting watched, because it's just going to help you be a more efficient seller, because you're going to know what's working, what's not. And then you're going to say, great, I'm going to lean into those kinds of videos that do seem to be working. So tools like Vidyard give you those notifications so you know which of the videos are getting watched and which ones aren't. Which ones are they staying tuned for 10%? Which ones are they watching all the way to the end, right? So that is an important piece. But I think the bigger thing is definitely looking at those outcome metrics and saying, are our overall response rates increasing since we incorporated video into our outreach? are reps generating more opportunities or more pipeline since they've incorporated video into their process. And then as you use it as an AE, we definitely have seen folks who are reporting shorter deal cycles because they're feeding their customers these asynchronous videos as they go and shortening things, as well as higher close rates. So those are all the things to be looking for and saying it's either pre-video, post-video, what do our metrics look like? Or if you have, again, benchmarks in your team and you have, you want to run an experiment and say these 3 people are going to use video, these 3 aren't, and let's see where it goes. Those are all things to be thinking about.
It's something, there's also this funny part where when you spend a lot of effort on a video and then you say, oh, watched it for 6.1 seconds, you're like, oh.
Yeah, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, right? Like we're all doing these things to maximize the output and the outcomes, right? And again, I hear it all the time where it's like, oh, I sent 5 videos and none of them got watched. And I'm like, yeah, and you made 5 cold calls and none of them picked up, right? It's like the same sort of thing. But it's, if very few people would argue, I would think, that the idea of sending somebody a video in your sales process is a bad idea, right? I don't think anybody would say it's a bad idea to send somebody a video and deliver your message that way, right? I think most people would say, yeah, I can see how that would be advantageous if they watch the content. And so if you really do buy into that, then again, yeah, it's just, you've got to think about, okay, like it's not always going to work. But there are going to be these times where it's like, oh, it's going to be the here. And I hear time and again where another great use case actually that I hear all the time is, oh, I had a deal gone cold or the deal gone dead, right? I had like a really engaged account and then they went quiet and I emailed them and I phoned, they're not responding. And then I sent them a video and all of a sudden I got a response in like 30 minutes. And I hear those things all the time and I'm like, oh, yes, great. Like there's all of these ways in which it's like, it can impact your cycle in lots of different ways. And, if it was like cost you $100,000 to do it, or it was a whole new thing, I'd understand. But given it's something you can just incorporate really easily, I think that's the big thing is like, it can be a really quick and simple thing to do. And again, if it becomes a part of the culture, it can work just so well.
I think that's great perspective. We got time for maybe one more question here for folks. And Tyler, as we're kind of thinking about that, I want you to also start to think about your key takeaway for the audience as well. I think, let's see here. I'm looking at some of the registration questions that we've got. Hit that one. Yeah, we've hit that. Tyler, it's like this stuff backwards and forwards, inside and out, man.
Well, the good news is there's a lot of consistent questions from the community on, and they're all the right questions, right? How long should these videos be? When should I use them in my sequence? How can I maximize my conversion rates? How can I make sure people click on it and don't feel scared? Those are all the right questions for all of us to be asking. And, so I think there's lots of great resources out there that we can share with you as well that tackle some of those things. But hopefully you got some good insight here on those different questions. But yeah, I'm ecstatic to hear the diversity in the questions we did get. It's great to see the community so engaged.
It's a lot. And Tyler, we've covered a lot of ground here, but just real quick before we let you go, any one key takeaway for our audience here? Just think of something kind of tweet length around video prospecting, other than do it.
Yeah, I'd say when you roll it out and test it with your team, make it a team sport, right? Make it collaborative with reps on your team to think about different ways you could be using these videos, to experiment with different styles and to find out what works, and then to share those experiences with the rest of the group and grow as a team in using video. Don't make it an individual sport.
Awesome. Tyler, a pleasure as always having you on behalf of everybody who joined us here live, Taylor and the team behind the scenes, and everybody watching on our YouTube channel and all the folks in the community. Thank you so much. This was great. Tons of great insight here, and stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day, Tyler.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, team.
Take care.